In this lesson, I want to introduce you to the topic of object-oriented programming. So first up, what is object-oriented programming? Well, Ruby is an object-oriented programming language. And the first thing to know is that object-oriented programming, or OOP, simply describes a category or a classification of languages. There are different types of programming languages out there in the real world, and Ruby is an example of an object-oriented one. So what does that mean? Well, the object-oriented programming paradigm, or in other words, the way of thinking about it, is that the OOP paradigm views a software program as a collection of objects that communicate with one another. So the next question after that is, what is an object? An object is just a digital data structure in our program. So it's a container that stores some kind of data and then provides ways for us to access and manipulate that data. Okay, I understand that these concepts, these definitions, these terms can be very difficult and complex to grasp. And I just want to tell you, if you're just starting out with coding, that's totally fine. It's totally okay if you don't understand everything we're talking about here, because a lot of these concepts will just kind of come naturally the more that you code in an object-oriented programming language and the more you experience these ideas in practice in your actual code. So the only kind of very basic introductory high-level idea I want to give you right now is in the real world around you, there are different objects. There's different types of things around you, right? There's computers and books and buildings and banks and gyms, right? And those are real different entities in the real world. And within a programming language, we have the exact same type of methodology or thinking. We separate things based on what they are, what kind of data they hold, and what we can do with those entities, right? In the real world, the things we can do with a book are obviously totally different from the kinds of things that we can do with a bank or a cup of coffee. Those are real world objects around us that are different things. And the same kind of thinking applies in programming. There are different things in an object-oriented programming language. They're called objects, and they function differently. They perform different operations. They store different types of data. And an object-oriented programming program is just having those objects talk to one another. Okay? For now, if there's one thing I want you to remember from this lesson, it's that in Ruby, everything is an object. Again, we'll talk more about these ideas and what that expression means a little bit later. But to get to the heart of this lesson, what I want to do is actually do a little bit of a mental exercise that will start to get us kind of thinking in a Ruby mindset before we even write any bit of code. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to pick three real-life objects around you. On the picture on the right, you can see a wide variety of different objects that I have right there. You're welcome to pick whatever you want. And for each object, I want you to create two lists. The first list is going to have 5 attributes. And an attribute is simply a fact or a detail or a characteristic or a feature about that object. So I'd like you to think of nouns in this scenario. On the next slide, I'll give you a more comprehensive example. But for example, if I have a book next to me, a fact about that book might be its author or its title or its page count. It's some kind of noun or detail that I can describe about that book. For the second list, I'd like you to think of 5 methods, and methods describe what the object can do. So that will be a functionality, a behavior, an action. You can think of verbs in this scenario. So for example, one thing I might do with the book is read it, right? To read a book is to do an action with the book. It's not a fact about the book like the author is. It's an interaction or a behavior I can do with that book. So let me give you an actual concrete example on the next slide. What I've chosen here is my computer, my MacBook Pro computer. And on the left, I have a sample list of attributes, and on the right, I have a sample list of methods. So again, attributes are details, characteristics that I can describe about the object. So for example, my computer has a type of MacBook Pro, a maker of Apple, a year of 2020, a color of silver, and a keyboard color of black. Right? Once again, these are details, characteristics, nouns about the object. In comparison, my methods list consists of verbs, actions, behaviors, things I can do with my computer. I can turn it on, I can shut it down, launch an application or close an application, create a file, right? These are different things that I can do with my computer. So what I'd like you to do is do something very similar. Simply pick 3 objects around you and make 2 lists like so. You can write it down on a piece of paper or open up some kind of document on your computer and simply write down 5 attributes for each object and 5 methods for each object. Things that describe the object and things that you can do with the object. And that will start to kind of get us thinking about what object-oriented programming is. All right. And again, these concepts are complex and they're very nuanced and kind of sometimes very dense and kind of abstract and difficult to reason about. That's totally fine. We're going to start seeing more concrete examples when we actually start coding. All right. That's all there is to cover in this lesson. So I will see you in the next one.